What is up, everybody? Welcome into Shout, a Buffalo Bills football podcast. I am Matt Parrino, and I don't have Ryan Talbot today, but I have John Keim from ESPN. We sat down and chatted together virtually for about 20 minutes to take you inside this Bills versus Washington Commanders week with a view from the other side. As always, Shout is brought to you by Tops Friendly Markets. Are you ready for Slider Sunday? Every time you visit slidersunday.com, you have a chance to win free products, brand swag, tailgating gear, trips, and more. One chance per day, no purchase necessary. Start your Slider Sunday winning streak with King's Hawaiian this football season and earn rewards to redeem for free product, brand swag, tailgating gear, and more. Visit slidersunday.com for complete details. All right, no more wait. Here's my conversation with ESPN's John Keim. All right, everybody, we're going to take a view at the other side. The Bills face the 2-0 Washington Commanders this Sunday in D.C., and I went to John Keim from ESPN to get all the details on this team for this matchup. You can find him over on Twitter or X or whatever you're calling it these days, John_Keim over there. John, thank you so much for joining us.
Sure, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
So I want to start with this defensive line because obviously, Chase Young, the lead up to this season, I'm sure was this level of excitement in training camp. Then he suffers the injury, misses the opener, and then he returns in grand fashion last week against the Denver Broncos. I mean, you were there, you watched it, you wrote a story about it. I highly recommend everybody go check it out. What was it like to see this front with these 4 first-round picks finally playing together?
Well, yeah, and I think this group has been together for several years now because Chase Young is from 2020. That's when he was drafted. So they've been together since then. And it's been a slow progression to getting them to play the way these coaches want them to in terms of the attacking upfield style. There was some resistance for a couple of years. And then, a couple of years ago, there was a lot of individual solid play, but not collective. This is the first year. I think we started to see the collective last year when Young was out. And I think you're still seeing it again. And so what you're seeing is the tackles, John Allen, Daron Payne, are as good a duo as you'll find in the NFL. And Montez Sweat, who has never had more than 9 sacks, already has 3. Some of that, and the big thing was finish. Some of that is better coverage in the back, giving him a little bit more time and him staying after the passer, right? And then you add Chase Young onto that last week. And what he adds is just another tremendous athlete up front who has a nose for the quarterback. And so you saw that last week. There were a couple of times he had 1.5 sacks, but it was more than that. And there were a couple of times like Emanuel Forbes picks off a pass while Russell Wilson has to throw the ball early because Chase Young is right in his face. And there were about half dozen plays like that. Another one where he gets a sack, where he and John Allen kind of forced Russell Wilson out of the pocket, and Chase Young chased him down. If it's a different end at that position, Russell Wilson picks up a first down, and they continue, maybe get a touchdown, instead settle for a field goal. But that's what he adds. Now, we'll say he can get a little bit undisciplined at times. He likes to freelance a little bit. And a guy like Josh Allen, they let this a couple of times happen. He's not the only one, but sometimes you get a field too wide, leave a gap. Running quarterbacks can get through there. However, he makes a difference when he's out there and he's rushing the way he did. I mean, he added a lot, and it makes his defensive line even better.
Defensively, I mean, I follow this, trends across the league and looking at, how teams affect the opposing quarterback. I mean, Pro Football Focus had 37 pressures for this Washington defense on Sunday. 25 of those came from those top 4 former first-round picks. Is there a level of what's their level of confidence? Because I feel like
it's pretty high. Hey, and it's funny because you talk to John Allen, for example, and it's like, what do you guys expect? We expect to dominate. And even after the first game, Montez Sweat was asked about, is this what you expected from this group? Because they took over the last 2 games. They have taken them over in the second half. And as an example, Daron Payne on one series, and I'll get to the answer in a minute, but Daron Payne in one series last week had a sack, a tackle for a loss, and a pass deflection. First series of third quarter is really tremendous. In the first game, though, we asked Montez Sweat, is this what you expected? He goes, when you have four first round picks on the line, yes, this is what you expect. So I think it's a combination too for them of fourth year in the defensive system under Jack Del Rio. They fired their defensive line coach last in August 2022. It was not a good marriage with him and this group. And they've responded to that. And I think they bought into what they want them to do. And then you combine it with their talent. And I feel like, for them, I think they think there's probably nobody that can really stop them. Now, other teams can, but right now, that's the confidence level they're playing with.
I want to go to the secondary briefly. Obviously, first-round draft pick Emanuel Forbes. You mentioned the interception last week. Also, was in coverage on a deep ball to Marvin Mims. Yeah. Where is he at in terms of, adapting to the NFL? I think that's always an interesting, position to watch for players coming into the league. How much are they asking him to do, and just where is he at heading into this matchup?
So, like on that one, I think, and it's funny because I haven't talked to him about this, but I was thinking about it, and just when we asked it, Mims just flat out beat him on this, and that was speed. And the funny thing for Forbes is one of his strengths is speed. So I don't know how used he is to seeing a guy that fast. Now, he covered some fast receivers in camp, but they're not as fast as Mims. And so I think, because again, one of his strengths is recovery speed and his length. He could not recover against Mims because Mims was faster. So I think there's part of that is getting used to, hey, there are other guys who have his speed as well. I think the physical play, you see sometimes receivers can create a little bit of separation at the top of the routes. He's a very skinny kid. He's as skinny a corner as I've ever seen here. And, so just thin as rail. So at the top of the route, sometimes guys can maybe push off a little bit, get a nudge and get some separation. He's learning how to deal with that. And then even in the run game on the edges, and this is where, Buffalo obviously had success there last week, that how is he going to defend the run consistently? Now, he's really good at, if he can get upfield before the back squares his shoulders, he's going to be okay. If the back is squared his shoulders, last week was a little bit different, where it's a little bit more of an issue, although others were around him to kind of compensate. So that's something to watch. How does he handle that role? Because, is he going to be tested there severely? But as a cover corner, he's done a nice job. And he dropped an interception. Well, he was in position for an interception last week. In the first game, didn't get it. Got one last week. The kid has a nose for the ball, and that's been evident since camp opened. I mean, he's always, if that ball's coming to him, he's got a shot at it all the time. But he does have things to learn, double moves, et cetera, that I think are going to test him a little bit. But he's off to not a bad start.
Mm-hmm. Let's flip over to the offensive side. And obviously, Sam Howell, a lot of people talking about him. Couple of those touchdown passes that he threw on Sunday. Obviously, the one to Terry McLaurin. Tape gurus have been studying that over the last couple of days, and the early returns there seem to be really, really good. What have you noticed about Howell this offseason? It seems like he's kind of just taking the league by storm. And it almost felt like in the offseason, talking to people at the combine, it was just like they were rolling into this season with Howell just because there weren't any other options. Is that correct? And has he kind of leapfrogged their expectations early?
No, I think this is and it's funny because being close to it, I didn't get a laugh out of it because I didn't understand how the national people would feel, or people outside here, because really, he was a 5th round pick. He only threw 19 passes, 1 start. You're really going to roll with them 1 year after being so aggressive looking for a quarterback? So, but I knew how much they liked him before the draft. If they had not traded for Carson Wentz, and I heard this before the draft, so it's not like revisionist history. Before the draft, I was told by somebody here, had they not traded for Carson Wentz, they would target Howell. Howell was the guy they would target, probably in the 2nd or 3rd round. That's where they had him graded. So they liked him going into the draft. And then when he was sitting there in the 5th round, it kind of felt like they had no choice but to take him. And so then they saw the progression throughout the season. They saw what they wanted to see in the last start against Dallas and against a good defense, and he did a really nice job. So they felt pretty good about him going in the offseason. And part of it too was young quarterback, rookie contract. If he hits, it allows them to build around the quarterback position even more. So all those are factors. I think they understood that that it was a little bit, I wouldn't say a risk, but they were betting on him. And but what you knew about him and what they liked were the attributes that translate well to position. He's smart. He's tough. He anticipates pretty well in his throws, and he has a good arm. And I think he works really, really hard. So you add all those up, and I think that's why they felt like he had a shot. And I always felt like, even in the offseason in January, February, I felt like he had a shot too, based on what I'd seen, heard, talking to teammates. I mean, teammates really liked him as a potential player or potential starter, even after just the one start. And Taylor Heineke was okay coming back here simply to back him up, because he felt like he was much more talented than he was and would be a really good starter. So you hear all that and you see this and you think, I think the kid's got a shot. When will he be good? How long will it take? New offense, kind of revamped offensive line. How does that factor? But there's still growing pains that he must endure. He sometimes holds the ball a little bit long, but man, when they need him, he comes through and he makes some throws that they have not been able to make in the past. Like Heineke had grit. He was tough. He was this. He didn't have the arm. This kid has those attributes plus the arm. And you see it on the throw to McLaurin. You saw it on the throw to Logan Thomas, the touchdown. There have been other throws in both games where you say, like, that's just a damn good throw. And so again, still learning, but he's 3-0 as a starter and he's learning.
All right, everybody, a quick word from our sponsor. If you haven't already, sign up to be a Shout Insider subscriber on the text line. Text 716-528-6727. You become an insider with a 2-week free trial. You'll get 1-on-2 access to me and Ryan Talbot. And right now, the Shout text line is brought to you by Carrie C. Beyer, attorney with the law offices of Francis M. Litro, located at 237 Main Street, Buffalo, New York. If you or someone you know is seriously injured, give him a call at 716-852-1234 or check out litrolaw.com. Also, visit the Tops Deli section and look for the bright orange King's Hawaiian displays to scan the QR for a chance to instantly win tailgating prizes, and visit topsmarkets.com/Slider Sunday for slider recipes. All right, back to the interview. You mentioned the offensive line there, and I wanted to ask you a little bit about them from a pass blocking perspective. According to PFF, through 2 weeks, they rank 15th. 6th in run blocking. What have you seen from that unit? Where are the strengths?
Strengths are in the interior, guard, center, guard. Sadiq Charles, left guard, had a really good game last week. Has done a nice job through 2 games, but really good last week. Sam Cosmi moved from right tackle to guard. Has done it. I think he's a stronger fit at guard than I think he could be a decent tackle, but a really good guard. And I thought he was better in week 1. Last week, a couple of hiccups, but overall good. And the center, Nick Gates, has some tough. They love his demeanor, nastiness. So they like that. The tackles are where they need some work. And Charles Leno, Andrew Wiley, 2 veterans. They'll chip on the edges to help them out, and they'll throw screens to slow the rush, some RPOs to cause some hesitation, all those things to help them out. And I think they've given up. I think Sam Howell's been sacked 10 times, but that's where I'd say maybe half of them are on the line, maybe. Because sometimes, again, it's Howell just getting used to holding the ball a little bit more. Maybe somebody else isn't getting open. Whatever the reason is, it's not all on the line. But where they're strong is in the interior. Where they need some work and some help is on the outside.
And then playmakers. Obviously, everybody knows Terry McLaurin. He's one of the best receivers in the NFL. What else have you seen them do through 2 weeks that you think maybe there's a second and third weapon kind of rising here in this group?
Well, Jahan Dotson's a really good receiver, and he hasn't had great games through the first 2. He can be really good. And so they did a good job last week against Denver of getting McLaurin away from Patrick Surtain and getting him in some other matchups. But Howell is content to spreading the ball around. And so that helps too. But Jahan Dotson would be one to watch. Then the screen game was really effective last week. That is a big part of Eric Bieniemy's offense. It was in Kansas City, of course, and it's going to be here. And the way they executed it was really, really good. And they do different screens, and they set them up very well. So that's also a big part of it. You get Antonio Gibson's more their third down back now. He's a big guy, but he's really fast. So you get him in the open space, which we're trying to do. He's dangerous. Brian Robinson is a running back. He's a little bit like Sam Howell, where he's been effective, shown some good flashes, but he's still learning. He's got to be a little bit more patient. When he is patient, the runs are pretty good. And so, Curtis Samuel's still there. They'll involve him. Depends on Logan Thomas. He has a concussion, so I don't know if he'll play this week. He's a good option for them in the red zone in particular. And we saw that on the touchdown against Denver, where he gets drilled in the head, which is why he has a concussion, but he makes tough catches in tight areas. So, but I think it really it's Jahan Dotson with the number 2 threat that I would look at. And Bieniemy Brown, who played with Sam Howell in college, has a lot of speed. So if you're not careful, he can hurt you. He's not going to have a huge game, but he can get 1 or 2 grabs because of that speed if you're not careful. So they have options. The big thing is, will he be protected, and is he getting to his second and third options at a good enough pace to let those other playmakers make plays?
Yeah, the screenplay is going to be one to watch. That's been an area where the Bills have kind of struggled against the first 2 weeks. I mean, Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook both hit ones in the first game, and then last week against Josh Jacobs, there was a couple as well. I want to ask you about Eric Bieniemy. I mean, there's been so much discussion about him the last couple of years. Obviously, kind of goes to Washington, gets to really take hold of an offense, call it his own. What have your impressions been of him and his impact on that offense?
The impact is huge. I think the impact on not just the offense, but the team in general. The defensive guys felt his impact during practices because they practiced at a different tempo with a different urgency. They ran through a lot more plays in camp than they ever have. And I think part of the reason this team is in really good shape, in part because of that philosophy. Like guys, like the defensive guys we talk about, and the offensive guys, hey, in the fourth quarter, this is going to pay off because you're having to focus on the details and you're getting in shape. And Antonio Gibson said he was in the best shape he's ever been in because of the kind of camp they had, more physical, et cetera. So I think the impact is there as well. He's intensely passionate. You always will hear his voice during practice. You'll yell, finish every time a back gets the ball, a receiver, whatever. He's going to yell it, and he doesn't miss details. And so I think you see that impact there. I just feel like they had lost confidence under former coordinator Scott Turner. If he had come back, it would have been a disaster because they just didn't have confidence in what they're being asked to do. I think they feel like they have that now, plus with a quarterback they feel can make it work. So that all helps as well. But Bieniemy is intensely passionate. Again, yells a lot, but it's not yelling like a Bob Knight yell. It's just loud. I should say just loud. He's loud. And if you like the details in the screen game, we'd watch practices this summer where if they weren't lined up and, if they were 2 yards ahead of where they should be, he's going to make them run it again. And then he'll run it again. So you've got to be at a certain point. And you saw that Sunday where on Antonio Gibson's long one, where he was at in relation to the ball, in relation to the blocker, in relation to the defender, gave it a chance to become a bigger play because he was just a lot of space for a linebacker to cover. And that, to me, is a direct result of Bieniemy's attention to detail.
Last one before I get you out of here. Some news about this team's name. It just never seems to go away.
No.
What's your prediction for what this team's name is going to be in a couple years here, and why maybe are people not into the Commander's name?
All right, so I don't know what it'll be. I'm sure I'll get another 1,000 responses from people about what they think it should be if they open this back up. They should put the potato logo on their head and call them the Redskins as potatoes. Like I got that one a lot too. So, that was all the time. So it does sound like they're going to look at it again. And when that happens, I don't know. It could be in a year, it could be in 2 years. The reason why a lot of fans don't like the Commanders is they don't like who chose it. And, it was a Daniel Snyder production. He had a group who was hired to do that, led by Jason Wright, the team president. So that's also on Jason Wright that, they were part of the group who picked that name. And so I think that's, first of all, whatever came after Redskins and then whatever, it's going to be not welcomed. But I think for a lot of them, they don't like that it's tied to Snyder. That's a big part of it. So if they really want to rebrand and feel really good, they'll do that. There are a lot of people who just say, Jesus, Jimmy, just keep the name and build a good team. And if you do that, people will start to embrace it over time. we're in a city where it's the Washington Wizards. Like, that's a horrible name. And it's 20 years and people call them the Wizards, right? And it's never been a good name. So, but I do think they're going to look at it again. It just does sound like that, but where they go, I don't know, because they can't go back. They're not going to go back. I know a lot of people brought up Warriors initially. Dan Snyder had a trade. The funny thing is, they say that if Snyder, because it was Snyder picked it, but yet there are other names that Snyder had picked, they probably would have been okay with it. Warriors is one of them. However, the Native American groups would have fought that one pretty hard as well. And he had a trademark on it for an Arena League team that he bought 20 years ago. So it was clearly a name that he liked. And I think the reason they didn't go there is because of they would know it would have been fought hard in court or whatever, or just by Native American groups. So, but that may have satisfied a lot of people, because I think, but I don't know. I think the other thing is, let's say they go, okay, we'll look at it in a couple of years. And let's say in the next couple of years, they start to win. Is the appetite going to be there the same way? Because now you're winning, and they were called the Redskins in 2018 when Alex Smith was here. They were 6-3, and I was covering guys going to a local mall, handing out tickets to get a bigger crowd. They weren't, you know what I mean? Like, so if you build a good winning team, yeah, people may not like the name, but they'll embrace the team. And, like I always tell people, like, if the Green Bay Packers had started now and they said, hey, let's call them the Packers, people are like, what? You want to name them after a meatpacking company? You know what I mean? So It takes a while to build it up. Success helps that. But I do think they'll look at it, because it does sound like we asked Josh Harris about that. And he's like, somebody asked him, what do you think of the name? He goes, doesn't matter what I think. It matters what the fans in the city thinks. And saying that, it's like, okay, he's going to listen to it. But I think they'll give it a couple of years to see, where do people go? Where does the franchise go? Are people okay with the building and the winning? If they win, does it change things? And we'll see.
Awesome stuff. John Keim. You can find him on X/Twitter, John_Keim. Follow all of his work over at ESPN.com. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Matt.